Sorry about that. I think I hit something and stopped the video. So this is picking up. I will post this as part two. I know I was talking about the Emperor, so I will just continue with that and at least give you the opportunity to have a little break. Not intended as such, but obviously you can always take a break because you can just stop the video anytime you want, come back to it and replay it and do everything else. But anyway, my apologies for that technical glitch, and I hope there's no major problems from here on out, and then we'll continue where we were going seamlessly. Now, the question was who elected the emperor? It had been the most important princes in the empire would elect the emperor. Obviously, the empire, the territories of the empire after the Treaty of Verdun in 843, was much diminished from what it had been. So we're not talking about all of Christendom. We're not talking about every major prince in Christendom. We're talking about within that Germanic period, because it was a Germanic empire. Okay. Um, and within those territories, you had major princes some would become emperor, like Otto the First with the Saxons and the Saxon dynasty, and then you have the Hohenstaufen, so, and the Stauffer. So you have different dynasties, but it's not heretical as such. The major princes would come together to elect the new emperor, even if it was designated as the son of the previous emperor, but still it was elected office. However, it became more problematic um, to determine, okay, can you vote or can you not? How do we put this all together? And with imperial politics, it became even more an issue. And so in 1354, Emperor Charles IV issued the Golden Bull. The Golden Bull of Charles IV in 1354 that set the number of electors at 7. So from this point on, there would only be 7 electors who would get together to elect the emperor. Those electors were, as I have them up there for you, the archbishops of Mainz, Trier, and Cologne. So 3 ecclesiastical princes, 3 archbishops. And then 4 lay princes, the Margrave of Brandenburg, the Duke of Saxony, the Count Palatine, and the King of Bohemia. Those are important to keep in mind because we'll be coming back to those, especially the Duke of Saxony in 1486, I think it is. The duchy was split between 2 sons, Albert and Ernest, and Albert received the title of Duke, and Ernest received the title of Elector. So when we start talking about the Elector of Saxony, that is how that came about, because that's the only case that we have. Everyone else still remained with their full title. It's just in Saxony that was split. But we'll again come back to that. But that's where this is all about and how it's known, because imperial elections were big business and very important too for our story when we get to Luther. Now, I hope that helps to understand the position of the emperor. In England, you have an emerging and increasingly centralized monarchy, even with the Magna Carta, still the centralized monarchy. In France, you have a centralized monarchy. Castile and Aragon, you have monarchies, which would become Spain. But the emperor was not a centralized monarchy. It was not a republic really, but it was a conglomeration of states working together. Often the emperor was one of the largest landholders within the empire, one of the biggest nobles, wealthiest nobles, but not always. And we'll see how important this was. But these conflicts were there and continue to show themselves not only within the hierarchies, but between them, and especially over the question of who ruled Christendom. If the Pope was in charge or was the Emperor in charge. Both viewed themselves, as I just said, as ruling for God. We'll talk more about this, the lecture for next week, some of the lectures for next week and on throughout, because that was a major question that had never really been settled. who is ultimately in charge. Everyone would say certainly God is, but then what? Does the emperor have the last say, or does the pope have the last say? That was the question. And there was conflict throughout. This idea that the Middle Ages was an age of faith, as it has supposedly been referred to, where everybody just believed what the Pope told them, and if you didn't, you were burned as a heretic, and so no one really thought for themselves. There was no such thing as a concept of individualism. All that is pure baloney. Absolute pure baloney. There's conflict constantly. There's arguments constantly going back and forth. And the Pope was just another prince trying to rule, leading the spiritual hierarchy, the ecclesiastical hierarchy with spiritual power. So it's like, how do we integrate these two? And it never really worked well, to be honest. But that's the situation they found themselves in. Now, I need to go back and then address two more issues, I think, in this lecture, if I can get through it. I'm trying to do this somewhat quickly. As I said before, with the issue of ordination, that was the basis of spiritual power. The clergy were responsible for the sacraments. The sacraments were the means of salvation. I'll be talking more about this as we go along, theologically too, but you had to be baptized in order to get into heaven. And that's what we're talking about in terms of salvation. What is salvation? It is what is necessary to get into heaven after you die. If people didn't believe in heaven or hell, it wouldn't be an issue. No one in the Middle Ages, or later Middle Ages, did not believe in heaven and hell, except maybe some of the Jews. That's the Jewish question is a whole other issue, which we'll come back to a bit. It's not insignificant too for what we're talking about. But in general, no one questioned that. Even Emperor Henry IV in the 11th century, who was fighting with the Pope Gregory VII and didn't care that he was excommunicated one little bit. It's not that he didn't believe in heaven and hell. It's not that he didn't believe in the sacraments. He didn't believe in Gregory's authority and power over the sacraments. Therefore, he didn't believe in Gregory's power and authority over excommunication. But the idea was accepted, if that makes sense. Now, the number